Hi, Crimies. I'm your host, MAB, and you're listening to the Coffee and Crime podcast. I hope you had a great 2 weeks, I guess it's been, since the last time we got together. I hope your summer is going well so far and that you get to enjoy the beautiful weather outside. I kind of sound like a dude today, and I have allergies, and this eye is like jumping like crazy. So, apologies. Sorry, not sorry. And again, just a reminder that I'm going to keep my bi-weekly schedule until my kids go back to school in September. I'm going to start the same way I always do. Please take a listen to the following disclaimer.
The content delivered through this podcast will at times be graphic in nature and describe criminal conduct which includes but is not limited to violence, sexual assault, and homicide. All suspects described in the podcast are considered innocent until they are found guilty in a court of law. I'm not an expert on any subjects covered, I'm just an interested party. The content will be troubling and upsetting to some people. Therefore, viewer or listener discretion is advised.
Reena Virk was born March 10th of 1983 in Saanich, BC. For a bit of background, Saanich is located around the midsection of Vancouver Island's Saanich Peninsula, and it's home to gorgeous beaches, farmland, wineries, restaurants, hotels, and so much more. Saanich has the lowest crime rate in the province of BC, and according to the Crime Severity Index in 2021 and 2022, it had one of the lowest crime rates in Canada, so in the entire country. Reena's family was really described as a minority within a minority. And to explain that a little bit more, her dad, Manjit, was an immigrant from India, and her mom, Suman, was Indo-Canadian. So even though her mom was a Canadian citizen, she had ancestry or cultural ties to India. The family had converted from Sikhism religion to practicing the religion of Jehovah's Witness. Now, I'm clearly the wrong person to give anyone an in-depth lesson on religion, but just for context, I wanted to give you a little bit more information. So, Sikhism is the world's fifth largest religion, and it stands for equality, social justice, service to humanity, and tolerance for other religions. So, I guess the way I kind of see it is that they're super accepting of everyone and everything. And then on the other hand, we have the Jehovah Witnesses who believe that Jehovah is the one and only God and that Jesus was his first creation. So this one is almost more like an organization in a church. And to add to that, they also do not believe in the afterlife. And I'm not here to judge, to each their own. So Reena and her parents lived in a South Asian community of about 3,000 people, and they probably stood out a bit because most residents were Sikh in that little community, while they were now Jehovah Witnesses. So Reena was bullied in school by many, and she was ostracized by other girls. She wanted nothing more than to be loved and accepted, which is, I think, what most or a lot of us want at 14, right? She was a heavier set girl, so she was picked on because of her weight and a few other things. Because she was seeking the love and acceptance of her peers, it's around this time that Reena gave in to peer pressure, and she started experiencing with smoking cigarettes and marijuana. Her family ran a pretty tight ship at home. I think it was mostly because of their faith, and she had less freedom than some of the other teens that she was surrounded by. But to me, that's clearly not always a bad thing. Reena knew some girls in a group home, and they really sold her that dream initially. They told her that living in a group home was amazing, it was great, there was very little supervision, late curfews of 11 p.m., and she would have way more freedom than the amount of freedom she had living at home with her parents. So we'll never really truly know if it was like only for that reason or not. But in 1996, Reena reported her father, Manjit, for inappropriate touching and actions towards her. And that just breaks my heart. After dropping the charges, she decided to come home and visit for the weekend. She had made plans of chilling with her parents and watching movies, just some good old family quality time with mom and dad, which I think was probably way overdue. Side note here, I can only assume that the accusations were not true because she later dropped the charges. And I think it's important to talk about how serious these allegations are and how they have the power of ruining someone's life, especially in a small community where gossip and rumors go wild. I think it's super important to normalize that conversation. Not only that, but I would imagine there must have been some level of tension when she came back home. Maybe not. Her parents they seem like super forgiving people. So maybe it was water under the bridge, but I don't think that she had a notion of what would happen after she made the accusations, that her dad would be questioned by police, etc. I think it was like a spur of the moment accusation. And I don't think she realized the impact or how serious that was. So she had all intentions of slipping into some comfy PJs and just enjoying the quiet weekend with her parents. But then the phone rang. This is where it would all change. Warren Glowatsky was born April 26th, 1981. He was born in Medicine Hat, Alberta, but his family moved around a lot when he was growing up, so he didn't really have like a stable place to live. His parents never got married. However, they did stay together to raise their son, Warren. His mom had serious dependency to alcohol, and when Warren's dad decided to leave her in 1996, he took his son with him too, and they ended up moving to Nanaimo, British Columbia. Now, about a year later, they were living their lives and they were finally settled into like a trailer or mini home. And that's when, at 15, Warren fell in love for the first time with one of his classmates. I'm going to leave her name out because she wasn't directly impacted in any of this, so I don't feel the need to bring her into this by name. Now, fast forward to the summer of 1997, there was a big shift in Warren's life. His dad, who was really the only one who had ever provided him stability in any way, shape, or form, met a woman in Las Vegas, not sure how, and they got married. So she had a place up there, and he decided to make the move up there to be with her. But before moving, Warren's dad asked him if he wanted to come with him and start a life up there. But Warren, because of his girlfriend, didn't want to leave her behind, declined to move up there. So he decided to stay behind in BC. But him and his dad had sort of this understanding that while his dad was living in Las Vegas, he would send checks several times a month to help cover necessities like rent and other bills. And his girlfriend's mom cooked him meals and she also washed his clothes. So he seemed to have made the best of his situation with the help of other people around him. And I mean, it seemed to go okay. But just like in every story, when you think everything is peachy, everything is good, there's always a catch. So, as much as Warren seemed to have his life kind of together as best he could in the situation he was living, he was into gangster rap, and he had also started an affiliation with the local Crips, which is a gang, a bad gang. And then I think I read somewhere he kind of started his own gang, which sort of mimicked the Crips, but they wore different colors. In 96, as part of sort of an initiation to join that gang, he was also severely beaten. So initially I was going to leave the fact that he listened to gangster rap out because I didn't think it was relevant. That's like when they say that a mass murderer used to listen to Megadeth or Pantera. I listened to that music too, or I did once upon a time. I'm not killing people, so I didn't think it was relevant. But I was wrong, because at some point he does admit himself that his love of violent music and his gang affiliation fueled his partnership with Kelly Ellard. So this brings us to Kelly Ellard, who was born on August 9th, 1982. Court documents from October 2018 show that Kelly Ellard had changed her name to Carrie Marie Sim. Nicole Cook was born in 1983, and she was living in a group home at the time. I recall reading somewhere that it was because her mother had a hard time dealing with her anger and raising her. So she decided to put her in a group home, hoping that this would shape Nicole's future in a better way than she was able to shape it. And in all the interviews I've seen, and this is just something I want to mention, it's my personal opinion, personal observation, she really comes across as so emotionless. So rumors were hot off the press that Nicole had left her address book at Reena's house, and that Reena had called some of her contacts to tell them mean things or really nasty things about Nicole. Like she had STDs or she had AIDS, just some really not nice things. So another rumor that was going around the community was that Reena had slept with Nicole's boyfriend and another girl. I think it was Missy's boyfriend. So she was sleeping around with other girls' partners. And, with the lack of maturity of a 14-year-old, I can understand how that would really bother somebody, but that threw Nicole into a rage. So I guess she kind of does have emotion. She was going to get revenge on this girl. So let's go back to that phone call when Reena was getting ready to slip into comfy PJs, spend a weekend at home with her parents, and the phone rings. So Reena got a call from her best friend at the time, Missy Pleach, inviting her to go to a party or gathering. Now, Missy was part of a large family, and she had 12 siblings. So she was the 13th child, and she was the baby of all of them. In an interview, she admitted that her mom gave her a lot of freedom, probably too much, and that during that time, she was drinking and fighting a lot. There was this one place by a bridge or under a bridge where all of the kids often gathered to drink and smoke and just hang out. So they would drink, smoke cigarettes and weed and just hang out. So when Reena told her parents, her dad had kindly reminded her that her plans that weekend was to spend quality time with them. And he was just sort of like, you can't just change your plans last minute. We've been looking forward to this. This is what we had planned. I think you should stay home. And then when she told her mom said, I don't think you should go. I am recommending and strongly encouraging that you stay home because these girls who invited you to the party, they don't even like you. So why would you go? Why would you put yourself in that position? And Reena said, no, Mom, it's okay. They want to bury the hatchet. We're all going to be fine. And that's why they invited me. So again, seeking approval and acceptance from her peers, she didn't take her parents' advice, as I feel most of us wouldn't have at 14, and she headed out the door with all intentions of not coming back home too late. That night, November 14th, 1997, Reena gets to the Shoreline Community Middle School, which is the area where the teens had gathered. Nicole Cook is allegedly the one that started the fight by taking her cigarette and putting it out in the middle of Reena's forehead. Let that sink in for a second. You can take this whatever way you want, but was this a hate or racial attack because she was Indo-Canadian? Was it to mark a bindi on Reena's forehead? For those of you who aren't sure what a bindi is, it's the little red dot or sticker on the forehead of some Indian individuals. That's just disturbing. Some articles stated that Reena tried to call her parents from a payphone, and because the payphone has 3 sort of plexiglass walls. They kind of blocked her in. But then other articles just say that they sort of linked each other either with their hands or arms to sort of contain her into like a circle of people. Either way, they kept her sort of captive in an area where she could not leave. So they managed to get her under the bridge where they just beat her. And I also saw an interview that there was a girl in the crowd who had done some kickboxing, and she was known to be a tough girl. And I guess she stepped forward and told everybody, like, okay, she's had enough. She can't take any more. So anybody who wants to get to her will have to go through me first. So kudos to you, whoever you are, for standing up, because you're literally the only one who did. After that, everyone just kind of dispersed and started to head away from the fight, leaving Reena beaten, black and blue and bloody on the ground. It just breaks my heart. So she gets up painfully. She knows she has to make her way back home, but she's hurting so bad. Finally, thinking everyone had left, she stands up, and she's not even really walking. She's more staggering towards a little bridge that she needs to cross to get home. So concentrating on putting one foot in front of the other and pushing through the pain every move she makes is causing, she is not aware that she's being followed by Warren and Kelly, who stayed behind. Kelly and Warren beat Reena some more because, she didn't have enough the first time, until she's unconscious, and they drag her body by the gorge. Now, because of Reena's size, again, it's not to shame anybody or body shame anybody. I'm clearly not a size 4. Because of Reena's size, again, a little heavier set, it is not believed that Kelly could have done the dragging by herself. While they were dragging her body, her pants ended up being lowered in the process of dragging. And if I recall correctly, that also happened in the Carissa Boudreaux case when Penny dragged her daughter's body. Anyway, that's when Kelly allegedly holds Reena's head underwater until she's no longer moving or breathing. Something else worth mentioning, when I said earlier that Warren's girlfriend at the time was not involved in this story, it's because that night, before the first fight even broke out, she told Warren that she felt sick and that she was going to head home. He offered to walk her home, but she told him to stay and enjoy himself, and that she would be fine getting home by herself. And I can't help but wonder if that night would have ended differently had Warren actually walked her home. I guess we'll never know. I'm glad she left, and I'm also glad that she made it home safely. So police, it is said in some articles that they don't typically jump the gun and panic when a group home resident doesn't make it for curfew at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. It's fairly common, unfortunately, or it was at the time in that area. And I think it's when Reena didn't show up for school Monday morning that people started to question and wonder. I know that when she failed to come home that night, her parents started kind of getting an uneasy feeling, but it was amplified when she didn't show up for school that Monday morning. And then not only does she not show up for school, but rumors are starting, and people are saying that somebody got beat really bad over the weekend. And other people are even taking it a step further and saying that somebody got murdered over the weekend. So this was clearly cause for concern for many people, including the police. But at first, I guess they just assumed that she would come back after a few days, like, teens usually do, and everything would be fine. And even though there was cause for alarm and the rumors at school were rampant, there was really no evidence and no leads that the police could follow until 2 girls came forward and broke the silence. So 8 days after the murder, November 22nd, 1997, The police are investigating, and they bring in a dive team to search for Reena. The water is low, which makes it sort of murky and muddy. It's really, really hard to search. Because of that, they're really basically hands out and they're feeling before they're seeing anything. They do find a few clothing items at the bottom, which they carefully put in evidence bag. They find like her jeans, her underwear, and a diary. The diary later proved not to provide any details that would help in the investigation. And I did watch a documentary where they show how they were able to get the information from the diary. And it's actually pretty crazy. So, because paper is porous, obviously, when it's sitting in the water, and a big component of paper is water. So, when it's sitting in the water, the pages sort of inflate and they become almost like transparent. So they literally had to take an X-Acto knife and some tweezers and carefully separate the pages. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was really interesting. Anyway, diary ended up not bringing any new information. As difficult as it was to see anything under the water during the search, they had a helicopter helping in the search, and from above, they were actually able to see the body clearly. They had found Reena. If we go back to the first attack on Reena, 3 girls ended up pleading guilty to assault causing bodily harm. And in an interview, one of the detectives who brought the teens in for questioning, like when they were all being brought together for questioning, said one thing that stood up to him and that he remembers now is how not bothered anyone was. They were laughing, carrying on as if they weren't all there to be questioned regarding the murder of a 14-year-old girl. So disturbing. 4 days after that, 3 more girls come forward as well, and they get charged for the same thing as the first 3 girls. After this news was made public, they were called or named the Shoreline Six. Reena was attacked and killed by 6 girls and 1 boy. I know we can't throw them in jail forever. I know they're young. I know that maybe the time matched the crime in some people's opinion, but not for me. Those 6 girls were sentenced, and their sentences varied from 60 days to 1 year in jail. I just find that too short. It's like the butterfly effect. If Nicole didn't start the beating, maybe then no one else would have joined in or started it at all. And if it wasn't for that beating, maybe Reena could have defended herself before being drowned. I don't know. But also, without that beating, she wouldn't have been staggering across the bridge when she was caught by Kelly and Warren. So, again, food for thought, butterfly effect. Now, the autopsy was performed on Reena later, and it confirmed that she suffered significant deep tissue trauma. Some internal organs were bruised, and that the trauma was of a crushing nature. Now, listen to this. The examiner said it was comparable to injuries someone would suffer from a car crash. Cause of death was drowning, but in her lungs, they were full of little gravel pebbles. And this indicated that as her head was being held underwater, she was trying to breathe, which kind of caused a vacuum like suction and invited some gravel pebbles to get lodged in her lungs. Crazy. Almost 2 years later, in June of 1999, Warren gets convicted of second-degree murder, and he gets a life sentence with no chance of parole for 7 years. The craziest thing here is that Warren didn't even know Reena. They weren't friends. I'm not sure they were even acquaintances. Maybe he knew of her in passing, but he had really no idea who Reena was. And this is where I get some head spins. It's like, woo, too much for me. Let me talk about Kelly for a second. On March 9th, 2000, Kelly also got convicted of second-degree murder, and she received a life sentence in prison with no chance of parole for 5 years. Warren had tried to put most of the blame on Kelly, and he said that Kelly was the one who said, "Come on, let's go get Reena," or something like that. So the fact that she didn't get at least the same amount of parole ineligibility period at the very least kind of bothers me, but I'm not there. I don't make the decisions. 3 years into Kelly's sentence, the BC Court of Appeal announced that due to some improprieties in the way Kelly was questioned, another trial would be ordered. This was on or around February 4th of 2003. And I guess what caused all of this ruckus is that during the first trial, the Crown wasn't allowed to ask Kelly why the witnesses lied about the accused. If that's not a loophole, don't know what is. If I recall too, Manjit and Suman, Reena's parents, sued the teenagers who beat their daughter, but in the end, nothing came of the lawsuit. So a little over a year after the appeal court on June 14th, 2004, Kelly's second trial started. And brace yourself, because we're not done. 4 days after the trial started, the judge declared a mistrial. The jury couldn't be unanimous, and they were deadlocked 11-1. I'm telling you, I can't make this up. On February 21st, 2005, 8 freaking whole years after the murder, Kelly's third trial started for the last time. This time, Kelly's found guilty of second-degree murder again, but she does get a matching sentence to her little buddy Warren and is not eligible for parole for 7 years. In the meantime, in prison, Warren changes his life. He either changes his religion or becomes very dedicated to a religion. He's very accepting and loving of everyone. He's like a model prisoner. He reads books. He takes classes to better himself. He goes for counseling, etc. So this next part is a huge show of character of Reena's parents because July 20th, 2006, after only serving 9 years of his sentence, Warren was granted unescorted temporary passes by the National Parole Board. And, get this, not only that, but Reena's parents both supported this decision. They are by far better people than I will ever be. Oh, but it's still not over, because in early August of 2006, Kelly appeals her conviction and she decides to ask for, you guessed it, a fourth trial. So now the Crown is faced with 3 options. Option 1, the Crown can appeal. Option 2, they can have a fourth trial. Or option 3, they can abandon prosecution. So this actually makes its way to the Supreme Court of Canada. Luckily, June of 2009, the Supreme Court is not budging. She's had her chances. She's had umpteenth numbers of trials, standing firm. So they reinstate her second-degree murder charge. Thank goodness. Seriously. I'm just going to brush over some changes because, frankly, I have no interest in either of these people at all. But Warren did get released on parole June 23rd, 2010, while Kelly was denied parole in January 2017. But later that year in November, so January, she's denied parole. November, she's granted day parole. What a freaking roller coaster. At the end of October 2018, her parole ends up getting extended. That's when the court document reflects that her new name is now Carrie Marie Sim. This now Carrie, that used to be Kelly, whatever, I'll call her Carrie just for the sake because it's her legal name, had been allowed day parole since 2017, giving her more freedom to raise her 2 children that, listen, she birthed while in prison. Please don't spread your seed. I also read that she got pregnant during conjugal visits. So I have no words. The last surprise and twist that I have for you, my little crimies, is that on June 23rd of 2024, so literally a year ago, Kelly's parole was revoked. Womp womp. This happened after she wasn't able to pass a drug test. So you commit murder, you get out on parole and have the chance to live a bit of a better life, and you have more freedom, and you still can't keep your business clean. And let's be clear, it's not a failed drug test because she smoked a little weed, which would still be enough to fail a drug test. But we're talking methamphetamines, for short, meth. So Kelly tries to tell the board that her test was a false positive. But this also came from the girl who refused to provide urine samples to be tested. And this didn't only happen once, but twice, which was also a breach of her parole conditions. She's now 42 years old, so I guess some people will just never learn. Now, just a last few tidbits of information, then I promise I'll stop talking. I'm sure you've had enough of listening to me. So during Kelly's first trial in 2000, Warren had refused to testify against her, stating that doing so could put his life in danger behind bars. And not that, most of us have spent time behind bars. I certainly have not. But most of us know this to be true because no one in prison likes a rat or a snitch. And these conjugal visits that she was having, and, when she got pregnant in jail, take this with a grain of salt. But I read somewhere that it was with a prisoner. So her partner was also in prison. Anyway, long story short, yes, it could have jeopardized Warren's life in prison. And even when he was charged with contempt of court for not testifying, he still didn't budge. The judge added 5 years to his sentence, still didn't budge. He was not testifying. But then he did change his mind and he ended up testifying in Kelly's second trial. As a closing statement, the National Parole Board said, quote, "Your behavior in the community prior to your suspension is inconsistent with what is minimally required or expected on an earned release. The board concludes that you will, by reoffending before the expiration of your sentence, present an undue risk to society. Therefore, the board revokes your day parole." End quote. Another thing I want to mention is that at the time, the youngest attacker, like the first fight that happened, and when they all attacked Reena, the youngest attacker had just turned 13 years old. 13. Most girls are still playing with Barbies at 13. Okay, maybe not Barbies, but let's be real. I really don't understand. And side note about Nicole Cook that I said came across as very emotionless. In an interview I watched, she was asked if she felt responsible for Reena's death. And she replied, quote, "I'm not responsible for her death in any way, shape, or form." End quote. Like taking zero responsibility for her actions. She demonstrated traits of sociopathy and violence in middle school. So when I said she was emotionless, don't think I was way off. In conclusion, Rebecca Godfrey wrote a best-selling book called Under the Bridge. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, but I'm definitely going to add it on my Kindle. It's on my list. And Manjit, Reena's dad, also wrote a book called Reena, A Father's Story, which is also on my list. I really, really want to read that because it's from the parents' point of view. And, I just, I can't even imagine what the parents go through in cases like these. Well, Crimies, this is the end of my story. For me, this is sort of where it ends, but remember that for families and friends, it really never ends. It's a constant struggle to get through each day. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Also, please don't forget that crime is a waste of time. Still on my bi-weekly schedule, which means that you can join me for the next episode on Sunday, August 10th at 11 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time. I super appreciate you all, and until next time, bye, Crimies.